Hello, hello. I think I'm here. Just checking. Yeah, I think I'm okay. I was having a hard time getting the program that I use to do this with to connect to Facebook. So, but I think I'm here. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Axel from Get Speaking English, and during this live, I'm going to go through the most recent article in my conversation class series. So I've been doing lots of conversation classes, designing lots of lessons and things, all based on articles. So this is the most recent one. So what's going to happen is I am going to go through this article. I am going to read it out loud so you'll be able to hear the pronunciation of words with the phrasing, things like that. Then I will also go through, talk about some of the vocabulary, phrases, interesting collocations, grammar points, that sort of thing. Anything that's interesting that comes up, I will be able to talk about that with you. And then you'll be able to go back, you'll be able to review this video if you would like. You can study the pronunciation, review the vocabulary. And then what you could do if you would like to get speaking more about this, I have conversation classes right now. So I have material all designed to get people talking about this topic and about this article. So you are more than welcome to come join me for a class. You can upgrade it as a lesson, but you can come join me for a class and talk about this with me. You could do one class, you could do 5 classes as well. I will tell you a little bit more about how to book those at the end of this video. But yeah, so let's get right into it. Just trying to make sure that my screen is all good. Okay. Yeah, so let's go through this. I'll say too, so I'm gonna make some notes. I will probably make some notes. And I will compile all of the notes, put everything together in a document as well. And I will upload them along with this video to YouTube, so you will have all of that as a reference. And yeah, all right. I should say too, also, because I know some usually my lives are fairly interactive. This is going to be a less interactive live. I was going to make it a video, and then I just didn't have time. But anyways, so let's get right through it, right into it. Feel free to say hello. I am live on Facebook right now. I am live on YouTube right now. I will be able to see your comments, so you are welcome to say hello, leave a comment if you would like. Yeah, let's get right to it. All right. So, I set up? No, not quite set up. I've had so many things going on this morning. Okay, here we go. I think I'm good. Almost. Okay, perfect. All right. Oh, we can see too that this article is a little bit old, but I think everything in this article is still relevant today, so it'll be fine. And the conversation is definitely, the conversation classes usually talk about things in a bit more of a general way. So if you are concerned about that, if you want to do a conversation class about one of these topics, about one of these articles, you don't necessarily have to read or study the article super intensively, because I have lots of things to get people talking about these topics just in a very general way, so they do not have to, in a way that doesn't necessarily super focus on the article specifically. Okay, so Golden Age of streaming could cost viewers up to £2,500 a year. All right, so consumers may reconsider how essential multiple platforms are as subscription costs rise and the cost of living crisis bites. All right. Yeah, so the golden age of streaming. Usually if we refer to something as a golden age, we're talking of like a very good period for something, basically. A very good period for something. You know, maybe there's a lot of good success or wealth, or the economy is good. So just basically a very, like, this is the best period ever for streaming services, basically, is kind of what they're saying. So we are in the age of streaming services, right? They dominate, they reign supreme. But as you can see here, they're being kind of a little bit pricey. So consumers, the people who consume a product, who use a product, may reconsider, may think about again how essential multiple platforms are as subscription costs rises. So we talk about platforms, we mean the websites or the services that deliver these different things. So Netflix, for example, is its own platform, right? They have their own thing. You could access it online, you could access it on a phone and things like that. Facebook has its own platform, right? Like its own sort of almost like its own ecosystem of different products and apps. So that's what we mean when we're talking about a platform. All right, let's see here. All right, so viewers are living in a golden age of TV, spoilt by more must-watch shows, films, and live sport than in any time in broadcasting history. But the cost of getting it all has risen to £2,500 a year, leaving some entertainment fans wondering if they can afford the streaming revolution. All right, yeah. So again, right, we're living in the golden age of not just platforms, but TV, right? So this has been a period dominated by TV, right? Again, that golden age, a very good period for something. And if we are spoiled by something, it's almost like we've been treated very well by something. Spoiled by something. It's treated very well by something. So in this case, you know, there's a lot of options and things like that in terms of what we can access for TV. Everything's available instantly, right? Like we have a lot of options, so we're very treated very well. And this spelling is kind of interesting because here, I'm in Canada. Over here, we would tend to spell it this way. That's kind of an interesting difference. You may notice that there's some differences between the spelling between American English and British English. So in British English, it's more common to spell certain words like learned, for example. That's another one. I'm trying to think if there's other ones. There are many more, but here's another common one where over here we would spell it with an ed instead. But just to be aware of, so if you are specifically studying British English, right, you want to make sure that you are spelling it with an LTs here, whereas if you're focusing more on American English, we would spell it with an ed. But the meaning of these words are the same. So that's kind of interesting. Anyways, so we are spoiled by more must-watch shows, films, and live sports than at any time in broadcasting history, right? And the cost of getting it all has risen to £2,500 a year, so it's gone up substantially, right? Leaving some entertainment fans wondering if they can afford the streaming revolution. Usually a revolution is kind of a period where a lot of things change, right? Where maybe we're seeing sort of like a change in how things are done, right? So, so here in particular, our streaming revolution, just how we are changing, how we are changing the way we watch TV, basically. So, revolution, basically, and how things are done. So basically, case, how we consume TV, consume and watch TV. Hey, Ak, hey, it's good to see you. Hey, I'm doing really well. How are you? Let me know how you're doing. So, the global streaming phenomenon has resulted in the launch of an unprecedented number of services, mostly paid for, from Netflix and Amazon to Disney Plus, and tiers of ITV's latest effort, ITVX, that compete alongside pay TV providers such as Sky and BT, and the license fee-funded BBC for a share of household budgets that are being pushed to breaking point. Right, yeah, so the global streaming, so global, something that happens worldwide, this global streaming phenomenon. So a phenomenon is sort of like this, like almost like an event or something. Kind of a good like something's kind of like really exciting, right? So it's a big thing, right? This phenomenon, and it's resulted in the launch of an unprecedented number of services. So the launch, basically just a way to say that things have been started, right? So a lot of new services have started. We talk about the launch of a product or the launch of a service. We mean that first moment when something is delivered, put on the market, so people can buy it. So we have lots of these things popping up, lots of them launching, and it's launched an unprecedented number of services. So something unprecedented. This is like never before seen before. So something that's never happened, completely new, that we've never encountered before. So there are so many, more than ever before. Right, and they're mostly paid for, so we have to pay for them, right? Yeah, so mostly paid for, from Netflix and Amazon to Disney Plus, and tiers of ITV's latest efforts, ITVX. We're talking about different tiers of services. So a tier of a service. This is just basically sort of different levels of services. Right? So it's really common for streaming services to maybe have, or really any service, right? Maybe they have a base tier. So you would pay sort of a small amount, you would get a small amount of service. Then maybe they would have a middle tier, so a middle level, right? Where you pay a little bit more, you get access to maybe more content or something like that. And then maybe you have a premium tier where you pay a lot of money, you get access to even more things, more really great things. So that's what we mean when we're talking about a tier when it comes to buying products, buying services, and things like that. Different levels of what you can access depending on how much you pay. All right. Right. And so all of these things that compete alongside pay TV providers such as Sky and BT. The license fee-funded BBC for share of household budgets are being pushed to the breaking point. So we're talking about here like the share of household budgets. We just mean like a piece of household budgets, right? So they're competing to get that sort of portion. And household budgets, they are being pushed to a breaking point. This is an interesting phrase here. If something is pushed to the breaking point, it's pushed to its limits. All right, so it's pushed to its limits. This is a very common phrase, very common sort of idiom here, but basically means that it's getting pushed to its extreme limits, to the point where, well, literally the breaking point. It's like if you do more, then the whole thing is going to sort of fall apart, right? But yeah, it's gotten to the point where it's no longer sustainable for people to pay for all these different services, basically. All right. So with inflation running at a 30-year high and already soaring energy prices being pushed higher by the war in Ukraine, the rising cost of everything from food to petrol is forcing households to tighten their belts. All right, so inflation, I think we know that idea when the price of things is a lot higher, they've increased a lot higher compared to how much money people actually make, right? So right now the costs of things are grossly disproportionate to what people have, the amount of money people have to actually spend, right? So with inflation running at a 30-year high, so it's at the highest point it has been in 30 years, with already soaring energy prices being pushed even higher. So if they're already soaring, they're already very high, so they're just getting even more expensive. The rising cost of everything from food to petrol is forcing households to tighten their belts. So to tighten their belts, another really great idiom in here. So to tighten one's belts, that basically means, well, usually we talk about tightening our belts when it comes to budgets and spending. So it basically means to cut back on spending or be more restrictive about what we're spending money on. Yeah, so they're basically, the households are basically forced to monitor their spending more carefully, maybe not spend as much money on superfluous extra things. So that is contributing to the breaking point. So the TV and video services that saved the UK from lockdown boredom. Britain spent 40% of their waking hours stuck at home watching TV, are no longer being viewed as the sacrosanct household essentials they were at the height of the COVID pandemic, which fueled a record rise in global subscribers. Oh, yeah, so the TV and video services that saved the UK from lockdown boredom. We might remember lockdown being that period during the COVID pandemic where we weren't able to go out, we weren't able to really leave our houses, right? A period, yeah, so the period, the COVID pandemic, people couldn't leave their homes, right? So that was lockdown, right? So a lot of people turned to streaming services and TV during that period to basically pass the time, right? So Britain spent 40% of their waking hours stuck at home during TV. So the waking hours, as you can guess, just basically the time when they're not sleeping, right? So we could refer to them as waking hours, like they've done here. Yeah, so these are no longer viewed as this is an interesting word, sort of sacrosanct household essentials that they were during the height of the COVID pandemic. So this is kind of a fancy word. It's not necessarily one that I would use. It means basically something that's just so important that you couldn't imagine really changing it. So like TV, for example, was such a staple in everybody's lives for such a long time, right? So it was really hard to imagine life without TV, right? So it was a sacrosanct household essential, so something that you couldn't imagine doing without. For example, you know, it would be hard to imagine living without a refrigerator these days, or living without internet access, right? So all of these are sort of like sacrosanct essentials, right? So things that are way too important, way that we can't imagine changing, right? Yeah, so something way too way too important. However, that changed, right? So all of these things are no longer being viewed as like those super important things that you can't do without, right? Yeah, and they're saying that during the COVID pandemic, it fueled a high rise in global subscribers. So it was basically the cause of a record rise in global subscribers. But yeah, this is no longer the case. It is no longer that important, right? So the public perception has been that these services are cheap. This is Tom Harrington, head of television at Ender's Analysis. And they certainly were. But the cost is now quickly transitioning from what is for many an automatic and then forgotten regular discretionary spend. Gosh, I can't read today. To a noticeable chunk leaving their account. Yeah, so the public perception, so how the public viewed this, has been that these services are cheap. So originally everybody thought that all of these services were cheap, and that definitely was true for a time, right? Like he says, they certainly were. But the cost is now quickly transitioning, so quickly changing from what is for many an automatic and then forgotten regular discretionary spend to a noticeable chunk leaving their account. Yeah, so the cost is basically changing from, you know, once upon a time it was something that just it came out of our account without thinking about it. So something that happens automatically happens without you having to do anything. Like, it just happens, right? So a lot of people were paying for these things. It was just coming automatically out of their account. And normally you would be able to forget about it because it was just a very cheap form of discretionary spending. I'm going to say that the word discretionary spending is a lot more common than discretionary spend. So I know they have discretionary spend here. But here it's more common to refer to this type of spending as discretionary spending. And discretionary spending, this basically refers to non-essential spending, right? So you have the essential things like maybe food, rent, heat, phone, and things like that. And then you kind of have the other things, the non-essential things, right? So maybe entertainment, clothes, maybe like clothes that you like different clothes and things like that, or maybe toys and stuff that you just basically all like the extra things that you don't necessarily need in order to survive. So all of that we could refer to as discretionary spending. So all of that extra things. So the cost used to be automatic, didn't make a lot of impact. And you could forget about that sort of discretionary spending, that non-essential spending. But now it is leaving a noticeable chunk. So a noticeable chunk, like it's a huge amount of money. It's very noticeable. They see it now, and they're feeling this big, large chunk, this big, large amount of money that is leaving their account. So a chunk is basically a large amount of something, basically what we are saying here. Right. So viewers who can't miss to bear out on the best TV on offer, from Premier League to Champions League's football to dramas such as The Crown and Peaky Blinders, and blockbuster franchises such as Star Wars and Marvel, we'll have to find about £200 a month on average. Yeah, so viewers who can't bear to miss out on the best TV offers. So if you can't bear to do something, it's like you can't stand to do something. It would be too terrible to do without, right? So basically they don't want to miss out. So if you are going to do all of this, you'll have to find about £200 on average to pay for it all. So lots of different things. So Ender's analysis estimates that consumers have the opportunity to access 130,000 hours of content from streamers and video on demand offerings, compared with a comparatively measly 30,000 hours as recently as 2016. Yeah. So this analysis, they estimate, they guess, right, that consumers have the opportunity to access all of these hours. So 130,000 hours of content from streamers. So people who do things live, like right now I am streaming this this article reading, right? So streamers, people who produce and deliver content online live, so happening in real time, right? And video on demand offerings. So we talk about video, something on demand. Basically, you can have it whenever you want. So we'll talk about video on demand or TV on demand. We mean, you know, you're able to go, you're able to watch the videos at any times, watch the TV at any time. You don't have to sit around and wait for it to come on at a scheduled time, which is what was normal back in the days of traditional TV. Yeah, so, and we can see that it's increased a lot, right? So 130,000 hours of content with a comparatively measly 30,000 hours in 2016. I like this word measly here. Measly. We're using the word measly here just basically to stress how small this number is. So use this to stress how small something is. You know, maybe I could say, you know, the breakfast, you know, I had a measly breakfast this morning. I had a really small breakfast. Typically this kind of has a negative connotation, so we're using it here to point out like how much the discrepancy is. So 30,000 is, you know, peanuts compared to 130,000 hours of content, so it's blown up significantly. So this number is measly in comparison. Yeah, so measly in comparison, almost like it's not enough. We might use it that way, right? So it kind of has a negative connotation to it, a negative sense. So as the market has boomed, the cost, which includes the average monthly price of a broadband and phone package, has increased by almost a quarter in the last 3 years, from £2,040 in 2019. Yeah, so as the market has boomed, so the market, like the amount of things for sale has boomed, so as it has grown up, kind of exploded, the cost, which includes the average monthly price of a broadband and phone package, has increased a lot. So we're talking about broadband here. Broadband. We're talking about internet packages, basically. Typically broadband internet. So just kind of like the classic, what we know as internet these days, right? Whereas all like, you know, fiber optic or whatever it is to connect to. So that's what we mean by just internet, usually broadband internet. And a phone package, you know, you get your number, maybe some text messages, but data. It's really common to have internet data these days in your phone package, right? Hey Ramen, hey, welcome. Hello, it's good to see you. Yeah, so all of these have increased, right? So the price of internet at home, broadband internet, is getting more expensive. And also the cost of phone packages. So the cost of data, maybe, of phone services is also getting more expensive. They're saying that it has increased by almost a quarter over the last 3 years, right? So it's getting more expensive. So Ampere Analysis, which compiled the figures, says that the increase is mostly to do with the proliferation of new services as the streaming wars hit their peak. However, UK households are now also facing inflation-busting increases in their home broadband, phone, and pay TV packages of up to 10%. Yeah, so Ampere Analysis, right, which compiled the figures. Figures here, we mean data, we mean numbers. And if they're going to compile it, if you compile something, you mean you put it together, basically. You collect it, you put it together. And we would typically compile data, right? So we would compile data, or figures in this case, basically means to collect and put the information together. So it's a lot easier, it's a lot more easier to review, make reports on and things like that. It's a lot easier to assess the information if we compile it, we collect it all together, so we can review it all in one place, right? So yeah, so they compiled the figures, they put together the data. They say that the increase is mostly to do with the proliferation of news services. So this is kind of a great word. Just another way, basically, to say that there's like a large number of something. So we say that there is like the proliferation of something. Yeah, it just means that there's like a sudden increase of a lot of things. Right, so previously there was really only one, maybe 1-2 services that offered streaming on-demand content, and now there's a whole bunch of them. So there was a huge proliferation of these different services, and which they are calling, there was sort of a streaming war. So a lot of competition between all of these different streaming services, and it hit their peak. What do we mean by that? Basically, it kind of hit to the point where it was at their, like, the top, like the most sort of intense point, basically. Yeah, so it hit their peak, basically. It hit the maximum amount, let's say here. So yeah, so the streaming services basically got as intense as possible, and they couldn't really get any more intense, right? So that has one thing to do, right? So you have that issue affecting consumers. But then they're saying too, however, UK households are also facing inflation-busting increases, right? So increases to the home internet because of inflation, right? Increases to the phone, and also the pay TV packages of up to 10%. And if we're wondering what we mean by pay TV packages, we're kind of talking about cable packages, right? So it's kind of common to buy certain packages of channels maybe on your with your television package. So that's what we mean for pay TV packages. Um, it's common, or at least here it's common for televisions to receive at least a couple of free channels, or maybe you would pay for a basic package that would allow you to watch maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 channels. I don't watch TV. But then you would also have to buy packages of other channels, right? And so those would be those pay packages. So all of that is becoming more expensive. Yeah. And the financial war of attrition initiated by Netflix, offering a low-cost binge-watching model to build global scale, then aped by all the rivals, has become a hunt for sustainable profitability, with consumers paying the price. So, in the financial war of attrition initiated by Netflix, offering low-cost binge-watching model. So attrition, kind of when, basically when everybody, like when prices are forced to become lower and lower and lower. So attrition refers to sort of like a gradual weakening of something. So in this case, we're talking about, in this case, how Netflix came in, they offered services for super cheap, and everyone else had to lower their prices in order to compete. And so that kind of resulted in a weakening of that whole sector, right? So everybody was forced to lower their prices. And so we would refer to that as sort of attrition, right? So it all sort of ended up, basically the whole system kind of got destroyed because of that. So yeah, so Netflix came in, they were offering low cost binge watching model. I'm sure you guys know, you might know binge watching, but that's kind of when you're able to watch one show after another show after another show. Basically, you're able to consume maybe the entire series, like an entire season of TV in one sitting, instead of having to, you know, watch one episode one week and then another episode the following week, another episode the week after that. So binge watching, or I should just say to binge watch, to watch many episodes of a TV series one after another in one sitting. And I know I said this word here, in one sitting. I just mean at once, basically. Just another way to say at once, at one time. So some great words in there. But yeah, Netflix kind of really was the pioneer of that style of watching TV, right? So this style ended up being aped by rivals. So rivals, those are competitors, right? Rivals would be the competitors. And aped here, aped is kind of a funny word here. We just mean copied. It's another way to say copied. So basically all the other competitors, all of its other rivals copied that style. So they also started offering low cost, bingeable things that people can watch. But now what they're doing is they're trying to find sustainable profitability. So anything to do with profit, that has to do with how much money we make off of something, right? So how much money we can make off of something. So if they're looking for a sustainable profitability, they're trying to change their models so that they are able to make enough money so that their services are sustainable, their services can carry on for a long term or long time. And as a result of that, the consumers are paying the price. We are paying more for it. So last week, Netflix raised its prices in the UK and Ireland for the second time in 2 years, making for a 22% increase in the price of its most popular plan, which is now £10.99 a month over that period. And last year, Disney Plus upped its cost by a third after adding more content for subscribers. And remember, this article is a little low. I know that the prices have increased even more. But yeah, last week, Netflix raised its prices. So they had a huge increase, 22% for its plan. And then last year, Disney Plus also upped its cost. So just another way to say that they raised their costs. We could say that they upped their cost instead. So they added more content and they increased their prices as a result. They upped their prices as a result. The service upped their prices, so they raised their prices. And that's kind of like a more informal way to say that they raised their prices. All right. So Netflix says that the cost rises are the cost of funding its swelling content budget, which has risen from $7 billion to $18 billion annually in the last 4 years, as it fights to maintain its position as the world's favorite streaming service. So Netflix says that the price increases are funding its swelling content budget. So if something swells, it's getting bigger very, very quickly. So they're making a lot more content. So they're making a lot of content, and because of that, it's costing them a lot more money. It's getting larger very quickly, so it is swelling. It is expanding very quickly. So as we can see here, that the costs have risen from $7 billion to $18 billion annually. So every single year over the past 4 years. And so they're doing this as it fights to maintain, as it fights to keep its position as the world's favorite streaming service. All right. So the streaming market has been supported by debt-funded, loss-making models, says Harrington. Netflix entered the market and set a price and everyone has come in under that to compete. You had all these profitable content companies, pay TV and linear TV broadcasters who had to move into streaming, and it's not as profitable. Now they have to start looking at value, and consumers are going to be continually asked to pay more until these things make real money. So they're saying, up until this point, the offerings, the market, what was available was supported by debt-funded, loss-leading models. So I think we're familiar with the concept of debt, right? Basically, when people give you money, maybe they will give you huge investments of money, with the agreement that you have to pay that back in the future. So, and notice too how I said this word debt, right? We do not pronounce the B, right? But yeah, so they have all these, lots of people had invested in it, right? And now they're expected to have to pay their investors back, basically. And loss leading. So this is a loss leader in business is basically the idea of like when you offer a product or service at a super low price to the point where you don't make money for it. But you do that knowing that it's going to cause people to maybe join your service, and they will pay more for products and things in the long run. So you kind of hook them on for a little bit, and then you know that they will move maybe to a more expensive tier or have to buy things in the future. So eventually that initial loss, that initial ploy to get people on board will pay off in the future. So that's what a loss leader is when we're talking about business. So you offer a product or service at a super low price, knowing that many of those consumers, or I should say hoping that those consumers will eventually stay on and buy more expensive products and services in the long run. So you will make money off of it that way. So that's kind of what they were trying to do. They initially offered Netflix these streaming services for super low prices at super low costs, knowing that eventually they would raise the prices. So yeah, so Netflix entered the market and set a budget price, and everyone has had to come in under that to compete. So they had to lower their prices as well. So you had all these profitable content companies, pay TV and linear TV broadcasters who had to move into streaming as it was not profitable. So originally all of these companies, like cable companies, for example, originally that model was profitable, but in order to compete, they had to join this unprofitable model just in order to keep their customers. And now they are finding that it is not as profitable. Their streaming is not as profitable, so they're trying to figure out how to make money again. So now they have started looking at value, so offering maybe more value, more content, more things that would convince people to pay more money. And customers are going to be continually asked to pay more until these things make real money, until they're actually turning a profit, making money that is sustainable. So so that's what we mean by make real money. We might more commonly say to turn a profit, or really just to make, the difference between something that makes real money versus something that makes a lot of money. Something that makes real money would make a lot of money. So, yeah, versus something. So if something just makes money, it makes money, but it doesn't indicate that it makes a lot of money, right? Like, we don't know the amount of money that this makes, but if something makes real money, we know that it's actually generating good amounts of money. So that's kind of the difference here. So they're hoping that they'll be able to make a system where they're actually generating real money, making decent amount of money off of what they're doing. So the drive for revenue and the squeeze on customers was highlighted last week when Netflix began its long-expected crackdown on a huge subscriber perk, password sharing. And so I know that this is old too. This is a little bit old. But the drive for revenue, so the drive for making that money, and the squeeze on customers, so that pressure on customers, was highlighted last week when they began its crackdown on this perk. So if there is a crackdown on something, maybe kind of like where you're like finally forced to sort of deal with maybe a bad or an illegal situation. Because I think for a while, a lot of people were kind of, we would say, skirting the rules. about something. So they were kind of like, they were kind of skirting the rules. Like maybe they were allowed to share things, but they were kind of almost exploiting the rules, right? Or maybe exploit loopholes. So for a really long time, people were basically almost taking too much advantage of this password sharing idea, right? So, you know, people weren't just sharing password with their families, but, you know, it was like friends and exes, or friends and boyfriends, and then friends of friends, and then maybe, I don't know, selling access to other people. Like, it was just, they were for a long time they got away with it, right? And now they are cracking down on it. So they are starting to basically to deal with a usually with a bad or an illegal situation. So that's what we mean by this crackdown. We're cracking down on the behavior. We're stopping the behavior finally. So they were expecting to sort of deal with password sharing for a while, to crack down on password sharing for a while. They're finally doing it. Yeah. Great. So till now, Netflix has let password sharing run rampant as breakneck growth outweighed the need to crack down on families and friends being able to watch Netflix for a few pounds. So yeah, so until now, they let password sharing run rampant. It's something run rampant. It goes, it develops, it does its thing without stopping it, without limits. Basically, something runs rampant. It goes almost like unchecked, without limits or anything like that. So before, they were kind of excusing it because it meant that more people were using the services. People were getting familiar with Netflix, right? Because that was a good thing. It caused what they're describing here as breakneck growth. So there was a huge amount of growth, right? So it was really good. Anything that happens, usually we will use the word breakneck, talking about breakneck speed, right? Something happens really, really, really quickly. But here they're using it breakneck to describe just like the growth of something. So there were suddenly exploded, right? And so that was better. That growth outweighed the need to crack down on password sharing. So overall, they saw it as a good thing. So lots of people getting, you know, addicted using their service. So overall, that's good, right? But now they're trying to fix it. So in a blog post on Wednesday, Shengyi Long, director of product innovation at Netflix, said the practice was impacting our ability to invest in great new TV and films for our members. The company announced a trial in Chile, Costa Rica, and Peru, charging between £1 and £2.50 to allow subscribers to add people from outside their household to their account. Yeah. So a blog, place online where you would write. So in a blog post, this person was saying it was impacting their ability to invest in great new TV and films for our members. We invest in something, we mean basically like giving maybe money, time, or resources in something. And notice the preposition there. We invest in something, because verb and preposition pairings are so important, but we don't say you would invest at something or invest on something. It's always in something. So try to get that one right. That's a really important one. I hear people making mistakes with. But yeah, so it's impacting our ability to invest in new things. So they don't have enough money, and it's making it hard to create new TV and films for members, for subscribers. So what they decided to do, they announced a trial in a couple of places. And a trial is basically sort of a period where you would test something. Right? So it's kind of really common when you maybe sign up for a service, you would sign up for a free trial period, right? Or you would just basically you sign up for a free trial means that you get to test the service, see what it's like, for free, right? So that is that trial, that is a period. So yeah, so they announced a trial, a test, where they're allowing people in these countries to add people outside of their household to their account for a small fee. So that's kind of interesting. So they are testing it out. They are doing a trial with that model. The crackdown could add millions to Netflix bottom line. The research firm Magid has estimated that about a third of Netflix users share their password with someone else. Netflix's decision also means, however, that many of those borrowing passwords will now have to decide if they want to add another cost to their monthly outgoings. All right, so yeah, so the crackdown, so like how getting cracking down, dealing with this bad behavior could add a lot of money to Netflix's bottom line. We're talking about bottom line often when we're talking about business. So businesses, bottom line basically means the amount of money they make. Right, so how much profit they're making, basically, you know, after expenses and everything, right? Like the amount of money they make after considering all the expenses and everything like that. Yeah, so cracking down could add a lot, basically, to their overall revenue, to their bottom line. And this person is saying that about, yeah, a third of Netflix users share their passwords with somebody else, so that's a lot of people. However, it means that the decision also means that, yeah, many of those borrowing passwords, any of those using passwords will now have to decide if they want to add another cost to their monthly outgoings. So I wanted to say that outgoings is also not a word that I would use very common, but we just it's basically another way to say expenses, basically. Another way to say expenses, right? Basically another bill, right? That's what we're talking about. I personally wouldn't really use this, but they're using it here. Not super common, but yeah, that's what we mean. Another way to say expenses. So another hip bill, basically like heating or rent. I think this is a bit more common maybe in business, maybe. But that's what we mean. They need to decide if they want to add yet another bill to their expenses. Okay. So the pandemic was good if you were a subscription service, says Richard Broughton, an analyst at Ampere. People were stuck home, and even those with their finances under pressure found home entertainment a must-have. But now there is a cost of living crunch on the horizon. With so many pay TV and streaming products, I think we will see consumers seriously assessing their monthly outgoings. It will be about winning that battle to winning that battle to be seen as essential entertainment. Yeah, right. So yeah, so the pandemic obviously was good for those companies. If you were a subscription service, so they made a lot of money, they got a lot of subscriptions out of it, right? People were stuck at home. Great little collocation here. To be stuck at home. Basically, you are at home and you are unable to move and unable to leave, right? Another collocation, a very common collocation too, we would say to be stuck in traffic, right? So similarly, like if you're stuck in traffic, you are sort of in your car, and maybe you can't move because there is too much congestion. But yeah, basically people were stuck at home. They were in their homes. They couldn't really leave. So that was really good. So even people with their finances under pressure, so even people that didn't have a lot of money, still found home entertainment a must-have. Like, so even people that didn't have a lot of money would still buy these services. They considered them essential, a must-have. But now there is a cost of living crunch. I like how they said this, on the horizon. So this was 2 years ago, and I think now we are in the cost of living crunch, right? So we were feeling that sort of thing where everything is really expensive. The cost of living, the cost of just things we need to use to live, so the things we need to pay for to live our daily lives has become more expensive. So that's what we mean with this cost of living crunch, right? So at the time of this article, they were expecting things to become even more expensive, and now we are in it. So with so many pay TV and streaming products, I think we will see consumers seriously assessing their monthly going. So seriously assessing, reevaluating their monthly outgoings, those monthly bills, right? So people are going to reevaluate what they are spending on, right? So it will be about winning that battle to be seen as essential entertainment, right? And so he's saying that in order for these companies to be successful, they would basically have to find a way to convince people that they are an essential service, that they're an essential form of entertainment. Yeah, so in order to come out on top, in order to win the battle, they will have to find a way to convince people that they need their services. Yeah. All right. So that's it for this article. So a lot of interesting kind of things sort of in here. A lot of interesting words and things like that in here. So yeah, so like I said, right now, in my conversation classes, I want to be focusing on this article. So I think for the next 3 weeks, if you are looking to get speaking about this, you can go to my booking website. I should get a link. There's a link. Yeah, so you can go to my booking page if you would like there, and then like right on the front it says something like talk about the current article, talk about something else, and a consultation. So if you want to book between now and February 16th, we can talk about this topic. We don't necessarily have to focus just on this article, but there are lots of other activities and things in that lesson that generally talk about this issue, right? Because streaming costs have been rising, affecting all of us. The cost of living crisis have been affecting all of us. So lots of sort of interesting things to talk about just related to that. So you're more than welcome to book a class between now and February 16th. There we go. Book from yesterday to February 16th to get speaking English about this topic. And it's a special price, so I've been lowering the price for whenever an article comes out. Yeah, so you're welcome to do that if you would like. You can also book 5 as well too, because I have a lot of material and some students really like to talk about something for a while. I know I personally love to do that as well. I like to get speaking about something for a while. That is really helpful when I am learning languages, so I know many of my students appreciate that as well. So option there to book 1, or you can book 5 at a reduced price. You can also upgrade it as a lesson as well. So the conversation classes just focus on conversation. They get feedback about pronunciation, grammar. Sometimes I could talk, let's say pronunciation, vocabulary use. Sometimes I talk a bit about grammar, but there's less. It's not a lesson. If you want to really learn about, if you want to really improve your pronunciation, really improve grammar, get some exercises to start fixing your fossilized errors, so errors that you've been doing for a long time, I would recommend upgrading to a lesson, and we can do that as well. And also, too, I will assign writing tasks and give writing feedback as lessons as well, and homework tasks. So those are things that are available as lessons, but not as a conversation class. So that is an option. So yeah, so if you're interested in doing any of that between now and February 16th is the time to book it. Anyways, yeah, so if you have any questions too, please let me know. Feel free to leave a question at the a comment at the bottom. This video will be left up on YouTube afterwards. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to compile these notes, put everything together so you will have those as a resource as well. And feel free to jump over to Telegram. Telegram is the best place to get a hold of me if you have any questions or anything like that, or you want more information about the classes that I do, or you want to know more about what it's like to work with me. All right, tomorrow I am going to be back for another coffee and crossword stream. So tomorrow I will be doing a crossword at this time, 1300 UTC. Yeah, so I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the crossword. Hope you will come out, help. I hope you come out and help me. I love when people help. Also because it goes faster, too. It's so much better. All right. Oh, hi, Tanya. It's good to see you. Yeah. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks so much you came out. Thanks, everybody, for your little comments and stuff like that. It's really good to see you. And hopefully I will see you tomorrow or in another future live. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a really great day.